Hi everyone! I know I've shared several process videos from Huely over the years, but I've never really made a video where I talk about the challenge itself. This might turn into a little series of videos. As it turns out, I have a lot of stuff to explain, and it would be a really long video otherwise. So what is Huely? It's a limited colour palette challenge I created for myself in 2018. The challenge takes place in July and it's all about colours, and hue is another name for colour, so I decided to name it Huely. And I know there are a lot of other fun colour palette challenges out there, most notably Huevember. But when I wanted to take on a colour palette challenge, November was still several months away. So I set myself the challenge of using a maximum of 5 colours for the images I created in July, and as I had a lot of fun, I decided to do it again the next year. To be clear, I created Huely for myself as I wanted to get better at using colours, as at the time it was what I was least confident about in my art. And I know it might seem counterintuitive to restrict your colour palette if you're trying to get better at using colours in general, but the thought behind it all is to make sure that you select colours that work well together, and you'll have to make do with what you've got. Does this mean that I'm a master at creating perfect colour palettes? No, not at all. There are still things I struggle with at times. This includes making sure that there's enough contrasts, especially when it comes to the mid-tone colours. This is also something I tend to discover as I'm actually using the colour palettes, but it seemed totally fine while I was first putting the colours together. So there are still a lot of things for me to learn, and something I hope to improve upon while working on and prepping for the challenge. The first year I did the Huely challenge, I really didn't have a proper idea of what I was going to do, besides that I wanted to only use 5 colours for each image. This meant that I didn't create the colour palettes until I actually sat down and worked on an image. Of course, this allowed me to work more on the fly with colours and adjust things where things weren't working, which was really useful, but it also made things tricky as I had no real idea of what I wanted to do that day, and I had to figure it all out in one go. And as that was the first time I did the challenge, I also didn't think to share the colour palettes I used, as it was simply a challenge I set for myself almost on a whim. The second year was similar in terms of lack of organisation, as I didn't quite know what colour palettes I wanted to work with, but I ended up working with the same recurring topics, which were mostly based around landscapes and animals. That year I also shared my colour palettes, but only to my Instagram stories, as I yet again hadn't really figured out what colours to use until that day. Fast forward to 2020, the third year I did this challenge, and I actually decided to get organised. I sat down and created 11 colour palettes that I would use throughout the challenge. More specifically, I'd be using them for 3 consecutive days. These colour palettes were then shared on my social media before I started the challenge, which meant that I got a few people here and there joining in and using the colours. Additionally, I made it easier on myself and created a topic or prompt for each of the colour palettes. This also meant that the topic sometimes informed the colour palette, and other times the colour palette helped select the topic. This made things so much easier for me, and I ended up doing this for both 2021 and 2022 as well. Therefore, it's not uncommon to find me planning out my colour palettes in the weeks and days before the challenge starts. That way I'm able to share it with others in case someone else wants to join in. If this is the kind of challenge you'd be interested in joining, let me know in the comments, as I'd love to know. And just so you know, during June I'll be prepping for Huely 2023, and I might be asking for some help to pick the colours from my amazing Patreon supporters and Instagram followers. So if you'd be interested in taking part in the process, consider dropping me a follow on Instagram or even support me on Patreon. And Patreon is where you'll get the first look at everything I do, which includes the videos I'm uploading to YouTube. As this video is already really long for my standards, I'll be covering more about how I pick colours and so on in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. For more of my work, check out my website and my social media accounts.